You know, we've done a lot of Wii homebrew experiments on this channel over the years, so why don't we change things up a bit? And by a bit, I mean going back one console generation and trying out the same project that I already made a video on a year ago. So basically business as usual. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. So jokes aside, I am really excited to revisit the NT for Workcubes project, which if you missed my original video, allows you to install the PowerPC release of Windows NT on either the Wii or the GameCube. In that video, we installed Windows NT 4.0 on the Nintendo Wii, so this time around, inspired by a comment that I received on that video, we're going to try to see if we can get NT 3.51 running on the GameCube, and then if we're successful in that, we'll try to install Microsoft's new shell environment, which basically makes the operating system look more like Windows 95 or NT 4.0. Now, this is going to be a little bit more involving because I've never done anything homebrew related on the GameCube before, so I'm going to need to mod this thing. Now, there's been many ways derived over the years to accomplish this, and I've landed on a newer project called Pico Loader, which is a mod chip that connects to the DVD drive connector on the GameCube without making any permanent modifications to the console. And from the guides I've seen, it looks really easy to install, it costs less than 20 bucks, and there's even a variant that doesn't require any soldering for around $10 more, which is what I went with just to have a little bit more convenience. So we're going to begin by flipping the console over and removing the 4 bottom screws. Now these are Gamebit 4.5mm screws, and you will need a screwdriver with a long enough shaft to reach down into these holes. And with those removed, we can flip the console back over, and the top here should just slide off like that. So we're going to set it aside. Now, we don't have to take apart the entire console, we just have to remove enough components to get to the DVD drive connector, which is located somewhere under here in this area. We just can't see it at the moment. But this will require removing the drive itself. Before we can do that, though, we got to remove the front panel, so that just kind of pops off like this. And then there is a cable here that you can actually just kind of leave plugged in and just leave it kind of hanging from its bottom part here. Just kind of push that in between these two pieces. There is also a rear panel that we can remove. This one you can just pop off and set it aside. And now we've got a whole bunch of Phillips screws to remove, basically around the entire disk drive assembly. And once these two on the left side are out, we can take the fan here and just kind of bring it out and rest it on its side to reveal some more screws. And last but not least, there's these 4 tiny screws on the front. And once those are out, you can just take the entire disk drive assembly and pull it out, and we'll set it aside. And this right here is the connector that I was talking about. So the Pico Loader works by utilizing one of these flex cables to sit in between this connector and the connector on the bottom of the DVD drive, so that you can still use the DVD drive to load GameCube games, but you can also load homebrew by utilizing the Pico Loader. So we're going to open up the bag here. And here's all the parts that were inside. Now, thankfully, they actually include 2 of these flex cables just in case you mess one up, because we do have to bend it a bit, you have to route it around inside the console, there's a chance that it could tear, so you've got a backup one that you can use, which is pretty nice. Now, the guide recommends using this fold key, which we're certainly going to do, so I'm going to grab one of these here, and we're going to bend it. We have to have the top DVD drive side text on the outside. So we do have to fold it at this center line here. And then you take the fold key, which has these like 3 notches you see in there. So we're going to get the center one to be right in, well, the center, and then the 2 outer ones to be on the outside of the cable. So this is a little bit tricky. All right, there we go. I got it. So now we flip it over, and then you take these 2 pieces and just kind of bend them around the sides of the fold key like this. So we're going to be, of course, very cautious and just get it like that. And then you just kind of fold it into place and, hold it here in the center. All right, so I believe this is good. So we're going to remove the fold key, and now we can turn our attention back to the drive connector. And basically what we want to do is just get this entire piece to be inside of the connector around that inner piece, just like that. And then we just fold the bottom and top sides of the cable down. So there is the bottom piece, and then the top piece we'll just kind of fold right behind the heatsink like so, and that should do it. Now, they include this drive plug if you don't want to reconnect your DVD drive. We are definitely going to reconnect the DVD drive, so I'm going to grab it here. Now, you have to be very careful because it's apparently quite easy to cut this part of the cable at this point, because there is this tiny little slit in the metal here. That you essentially want to just slide the cable through. They actually recommend putting on like some Scotch tape, which I think I'm definitely going to do just so we avoid cutting this. Alright, it looks like I put the tape on in the wrong spot. We basically want it to be right at this fold here. So we'll just put on a little bit more and wrap it around. And the cable also needs to be on the left side of this mounting piece here. So with all that, we're going to take the DVD drive and try to slide it back on. And then we're just going to kind of guide the cable through that little slit in the metal. And oh, I think it actually, whoops, it came out. Okay, let's try again. This needs to be folded down. Okay, I think we're good. We just got to slowly guide the drive down. And there we go. So now we can turn our attention to the actual mod chip. Now, the version of this that requires soldering just uses a Raspberry Pi Pico. On the solderless version, there's this different board here that looks like it has a Raspberry Pi chip on it. So I guess this is like based off of the Pico, but you just connect this flex cable to this ZIF connector here. So we're going to just slide it on in and just press down on the locking lever. And now we can rotate the console a little bit, and you want to get the flex cable to be behind this little plastic piece here, and then you just set this right on here, and then you mount it down with these two screws. There's the other one. And there we go. Now all we have to do is reassemble the GameCube and test this out and make sure it actually works. Now, if you're wondering what this USB-C port here on the top is for, that's just if you want to load a different firmware onto this thing, but it already has everything that we'll need to just pop in an SD card and load up our own homebrew applications. I probably didn't need to reassemble the entire thing yet because I do want to test our work before we move on to actually trying to load the Windows NT installer. And speaking of installers, today's video sponsor Surfshark has installers for just about all of your devices, because their VPN works with desktops, laptops, phones, and just about everything in between. Surfshark has been my VPN of choice for years now, and it's really come in handy whenever I'm looking to hide my IP address from a shady website or access region-locked content. It's super easy to connect to one of their over 4,500 servers in 140 locations to change your device's IP address in a flash. And you can do it on all of your devices at the same time, thanks to their support of unlimited simultaneous connections. But they're more than just a VPN, as they include some nice extras like their alternative ID feature, which can create proxy email addresses to protect your privacy, and an antivirus program to keep your devices free of malware. They also don't keep logs, so your browsing history is kept private, and they support advanced features like multi-hop and split tunneling. All of their plans come backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee, and if you sign up at surfshark.com/MichaelMJD, you'll get 4 extra months with the purchase of a year or 2-year plan. So be sure to check them out, and huge thanks again to Surfshark for making this video possible. Alright, so here is the moment of truth. Well, it still starts up, that's a good sign. So it says you must first set the calendar and other options. I've actually seen this message before. I think the clock battery in this thing is shot, but we'll go in here to the calendar and yeah, it thinks it's 2132. That's slightly off. We'll just set it to 2003, sure, and go back here. And there we go, Swiss for GameCube. That is the homebrew launcher, basically. So we're gonna head into this. And This is where we'll be able to launch into the Windows NT setup once we get all that stuff copied over to here. So I've got a micro SD card here set up with all the Windows NT files we're going to need from the GitHub project page, and I just briefly wanted to go over the model differences for the GameCube, because there's a couple of ways that we can go about connecting the micro SD card to this console. You can use either a serial port adapter or a memory card adapter, and both of these are available from the same site that you can get the Pico Loader kit from, and I'll have all that linked down below. There were two different models of the GameCube released throughout its lifespan. The original release was model number DOL001, and the revised model is DOL-101. Now, this serial port adapter makes use of serial port number 2 on the bottom of the console, which was only present on the original model of the GameCube. It was removed in DOL-101. So if you have this console, you're only going to be able to use the memory card adapter. Another quick way to tell these two apart is by looking at the port selection on the back, because the original model has this digital AV out port, which was removed on the 101 revision. So we did install Pico Loader on this original model GameCube, so we're going to take advantage of that second serial port and install our SD card adapter in here. Now, keeping with the theme of having two different versions, there's actually two variants of this serial port adapter as well. There's a cheaper one that just plugs into this slot here, and then, you have to get into this compartment whenever you want to change out the SD card. Or you can get this Pro variant, which is the one I got because I think it's pretty nice, where it just sits flush here on the back next to the cover for the first serial port, and then you access the card slot on the side. So we're going to pop in the micro SD card and get this installation underway. Alright, so after powering on the GameCube, it brought me to this global settings menu for Swiss, and you can see configuration device here is SD card SD2SP2, which is the adapter that we installed, so it's recognized that, that's all good. By the way, I am using the ASCII keyboard controller that I've demonstrated in a few other videos, because this is really going to come in handy when we're going through the NT setup and just, well, trying to use Windows, because if you don't have this, or if you don't have like a, GameCube to USB adapter to plug in a USB keyboard, if that even works with this, you're going to have to use the C stick to just go through all the letters and numbers on the keyboard, which, yeah, that sounds pretty miserable. So we are going to just go with all these settings here. Everything looks good from what I can see. So we're just going to go down and hit save and exit from the settings menu here. And here is the file browser. So we've got everything on the SD card, so that's looking good. And we just have to run this ArcLoader doll file. And from here on out, it's pretty much the exact same process that we went through in the Wii video. Of course, we will have to make some driver changes when we load those in. But we're going to go down to Run Firmware Setup and repartition disk for NT installation. Choose our disk image there. And we'll press X on the GameCube controller, which is mapped to Y. And now we're back here. We're going to go to Run NT Setup from CD00, and it'll launch us right into the setup. Now, of course, just like last time, it's going to come up and say that it couldn't determine the type of computer. So we're going to go through here, load other, and then select Nintendo GameCube, Wii, and Wii U. And then we want to load other, press A, and then this time we're going to select Nintendo GameCube controller ports, and we also have to select the SD Gecko one down here, but we can ignore the two Nintendo Wii ones. So we have those two loaded. We'll press A. Video adapter, we're going to do the same thing here, and although this time we're going to select NT3.x instead of NT4, since that's what we're installing, and it'll begin to load. Alright, looking good so far. So we're going to just press enter, express setup. It's found those two mass storage devices, that's good. We need to change keyboard to XT, AT, or enhanced keyboard, and then pointing device to no mouse or other pointing device, but everything else we can leave alone. So we'll say above list matches my computer. It'll find the C drive, but it'll say it's unformatted or damaged. So we'll go in here and we'll format it using NTFS, which is exactly what I did in the last video, because the guide on GitHub does not specify a file system that you should use. So we're just going to go with that. WinNT35 as the directory, that's fine. And this is where having the GameCube keyboard controller is really going to come in handy, because otherwise, this is what we'd have to deal with. Going through the C-stick just for each individual number and letter on the keyboard. Yeah, that sounds kind of miserable. So we're going to put my name in there. We'll just call this NT-GC and just hit continue. English US. We're going to go with most of just the default options, although we are not going to set up a local printer. The mouse pointer works, by the way, using the analog stick, so that's good. We will just hit OK. The network adapter is another thing that it's obviously not going to find, but we're just going to not install one, or just have it continue with, yeah, we'll say no network over here. And hit OK. And we're done, so it's time for another restart. Well, we've made it, everybody. So here is Windows NT 3.51 running on the GameCube, which is just super cool. I mean, look at that. It even says identifier Nintendo GameCube down there. Like, that is just really cool. I mean, it was obviously really cool to get this working on the Wii, but the GameCube, especially after having to do that hardware mod, is just a lot more rewarding to see this actually working. So, yeah, I have copied New Shell over to here. I just opened up the disk image in WinImage on my capture PC here and copied over all those files. So we've got New Shell here. We'll install this in a moment, but I kind of want to go in, because one thing that I didn't do in the New Shell video that I made on this channel back like 6 years ago, I am curious if we go and change all the like color settings, you know, in a control panel here, and we pick maybe a different color scheme here. Let's go with like Arizona, and then maybe change the color palette. I don't want to make this like super eye straining, but you know, I'm thinking like, why don't we change some of this stuff and see how much of this carries over when we install New Shell. I feel like I say this every time that we take a look at Windows 3X, but it's just amazing how customizable that Windows used to be and how boring that modern versions of Windows are now. I think that's pretty good. We're going to go with that, so we'll say OK. And yeah, I mean, I think that looks pretty great. Not the worst, but I mean, certainly not the best either. So how about we hop into File Manager and run the New Shell setup script, which, if I remember correctly, is the shupdate.cmd file. But I think we have to have the DOS prompt window open first so that we can actually see what it's outputting. The fact that it's closing immediately is kind of concerning to me. It thinks this is a beta or pre-release version of 3.51? What? This is the final version, isn't it? I mean, that's what I downloaded. Alright, well, here's a very important discovery. It turns out that the versions of New Shell that are currently available on the web are not compiled for the PowerPC architecture. This was my next guess, because the fact that it's complaining about these files here not being valid Windows NT applications, that's typically something you'll see when like you're trying to run an application that is compiled for a completely different architecture. Now, over on BetaWiki, on their page for the New Shell or Shell Technology Preview for Windows NT, it does claim that there are other supported platforms in addition to x86, one of which, of course, being PowerPC. However, if you go over to WinWorld's download page for New Shell, you'll see that the only architectures listed for both of these versions is x86. And there's actually some people down here discussing the fact that BetaWiki claims that, you know, there's these other architectures, but there's not a version available for download on here. I looked on Beta Archive as well, and the two versions of New Shell that they have over there, which are probably just the same two that WinWorld have, also don't work on PowerPC. So yeah, I guess this is a call out for anybody out there who has a PowerPC version of the Shell Technology Preview for NT 3.51, because I guess that has not been archived yet, if it even exists and what BetaWiki says is accurate, which it could certainly be wrong. So I guess I'll have to take a little bit of a detour here. You know, it only seems appropriate, since we're running this on the GameCube, why don't we play some games on it? So we'll open up the games program group here. We, of course, have Solitaire, one of my favorite classic Windows games. And let's try to painfully move all of these cards around Yeah, this is going to take a while. I'm kind of reconsidering what I'm doing here. I don't think I want to play through like an entire game of solitaire on the GameCube keyboard controller, but you could certainly do that if you want to, thanks to this project. We got a 5 here, we'll move that down. How about we wait till we find an ace? I may regret saying that because that could take a while. But let's just see what we got here. We got a queen. That doesn't help us. There's an ace. Okay, perfect. Now we can actually double click on the ace, and we have another ace right here, because that will move it up to the top 4 spots here. But obviously you can't do that with just moving cards around on the bottom stacks here, because that would kind of defeat the purpose of the whole game. But yeah, that is Solitaire. And that is modding a Nintendo GameCube to get Windows NT running on it. And yeah, I mean, now that I have this thing homebrewed, I'm definitely looking at maybe doing some other videos featuring this. I know that there's a project to get Linux running on this thing. Might have to take a look at that, but I'm open to hearing any suggestions that you guys might have. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, definitely be sure to give it a thumbs up, get subscribed, maybe consider becoming a patron or a channel member to get early and sponsor-free access to these videos before anybody else. But either way, I just want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.